Richie!
Hello, Sin.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 232 of the Snack Covenant. Hey Richie!
Yes, Sin.
There's some very exciting news happening in the Elden Ring community today.
Oh, Elden Ring.
We watched the leaked footage of the trailers.
Yep.
We took some screenshots, and we have some things to say.
Yes.
First, can you give me your overall impression of the whole trailer? Or the bits of trailer that you put together in your mind through the power of mental editing?
Yes. I guess the thing that struck me most about the trailer is it almost seems like three distinct styles that are sort of being mashed together. Because most of what we've seen looks a lot like Dark Souls 2, but more outdoorsy.
Hmm.
Things like, you wandering around with the torch in the cave, the sort of the color palette, the design of the areas, like that looked very visually. I mean, the design of like the castles and everything, and the big bridge you see constantly in the background, that reminded me a lot of Dark Souls 2. But then you've also got things like the giants that seem to be sort of harpooned to that big thing they're dragging, and you've got a character who I think is the arm man from the trailer, or at least a similar kind of creature, and like the sort of severed head that's turning to ash or rock or something, which gives you this weird like body horror Demon Souls world gone wrong feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, for like 10 seconds, it becomes like Otogi or the Divine Realm stuff in Sekiro, where there's just straight up like, here's an Onmyoji who makes everything turn into like a big reflected moon. And if you showed me those three things without telling me they were all Elden Ring, I would actually think, is this just the next three games From is doing? So I'm interested in whether like they do sort of manage to make these cohere into a single aesthetic in the way that Bloodborne combined a bunch of stuff together, or if the whole point of it being this big open world is that there's just all of these different things happening that don't really look anything like each other.
Thank you, Richie. I got a very similar impression of the trailer when I watched it. At some points, it seemed to be very Dark Souls.
Mm.
And at some point, it felt a little Sekiro.
Mm.
But then, toward the end, where it says, from the creators of Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Sekiro, the image, the background, the moon, and the statue on the side made me think of Bloodborne.
Yeah. Like, I wonder if it's going to start as the like more traditional high fantasy stuff that we're seeing, and then transition into being this weird body horror thing, or if they're just going to exist side by side from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously this is a very, very, very low quality video file. So it's hard to like analyze it very closely. And also a lot of the enemies, like the designs look quite complicated. So it's actually really hard to tell what's what. When you look at them, you just sort of see these sort of strange masses moving. The only thing you can make out really clearly is the dragon, because it's a dragon. So I'll start with an image that recurs throughout. And I think this is significant. I think this might be like the Filing Shrine equivalent. Either the Filing Shrine equivalent or the Anor Londo equivalent, which is this enormous tree with a bridge leading to it. And what's kind of interesting is if we keep looking at when the dragon shows up, we've established that's the same tree because it's got the same bridge leading to it. The tree's glowing except when the dragon shows up. So I don't know if that is a like a world tendency system, or if it's the lighting, or if it's a time of day thing, but like it looks like the tree sometimes it is glowing and sometimes it is not.
Because they did want to implement some sort of system in Dark Souls 3.
Yeah, Dark Souls 3 initially had a quite in depth kind of day night system, but you had a degree of control over it. You could sort of shift the time of day around a bit, like manipulating world tendency in Demon Souls. So I'm wondering if that is maybe what's going on here. What I'm really interested in is the way that the tree next to it, there is this huge tower with a bridge leading to it. Because that says to me, like, either that is the hub, like the Filing Shrine area, or it's the Anor Londo equivalent that you're sort of working toward all game. If you think about it as like a big open world, the presence of a gigantic tree is helpful for orienting where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if like that's basically the center of the map. And also like the way that, okay, this is the really important thing, this is this massive tree that like we sort of heard mention of a big tree in Elden Ring, and the trailer that we saw, the destruction of the ring seems to take place inside of a tree. One of the things that a character says to us in the trailer is like, I cannot imagine why you seek the Elden Ring, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We also know the Elden Ring was shattered by someone or something, which implies like, okay, you're seeking it, but it's also broken. So I'm wondering if like, is the structure of this going to be that you have to get the different pieces of the Elden Ring and take them back to the tree and put them back together again? In the same way that like the Souls games were about like, hey, get these souls and bring them back to like the kiln where it all started. Because I mean, that like, it's not great, but you can see it being like a decent skeleton for an open world thing. Just like get these bits of a ring and stick them back together again as an excuse to go around the different areas. It's really confusing when they say like you're seeking the Elden Ring, because we see the Elden Ring, presumably that is the Elden Ring, getting destroyed on camera.
Because we don't really know when exactly the ring gets shattered and what are the properties of the ring.
Well, it commanded the stars, giving life its fullest brilliance.
Oh, Elden Ring.
Do you think the character saying that is the same one who's like, I cannot imagine why you seek the Elden Ring? Do you think they're the same character?
They might be,
Yeah.
but they might not be.
Mm. You know what was conspicuously absent? There was no firekeeper slash doll character.
In the trailer.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Because you'd think like,
But it's a 10-second trailer filmed on a flip phone.
no, but what I mean is those characters tend to be the like exposition dump ones who explain the world to you. And here the world is being explained by some like old dude instead.
Oh my god! He's the firekeeper.
He might, I don't know. Because he's the one who's like, oh, you've arrived, like you crossed the Sea of Fog to the Riftlands, which is something you'd expect, like.
A monumental to say.
No, well, yeah, you'd expect like the hub NPC to say, unless this guy is the Crestfallen Warrior equivalent, who's like, oh, you'll never make it.
Mm. There were some parts in the trailer that I really, really liked.
Yeah.
One of them was the two giants pulling the cart I assume is filled with food.
Did you notice that that cart comes back?
They featured the food cart more often than they featured the firekeepers.
Here's the giants pulling the cart, and then in the horse riding sequence, the character is riding by the same cart, I think, from the other side.
Wow, it's very big.
Well, yeah, because they one of the things they mentioned is like bosses would sort of move around the map.
Mm.
So I'm wondering if like the cart is some sort of event that you either encounter randomly or maybe you have to chase it down.
That would be cool.
Yeah. This is actually giving me weird Armored Core 4 Answer vibes, which we know is Miyazaki's first game, and the game he then proceeded to like base a bunch of stuff on, kind of. Because the thing about Armored Core 4 Answer, in comparison to the other games, is that it was about the presence of these enormous sort of war machines called arms forts that were all unique. So you would get missions where you had to take down an arms fort, but they would all function differently. And like a couple of them were sort of like this. It was like a big train or a big tank that was moving very slowly across the ground, and you had to figure out a weak point.
Mm-hmm.
So the presence of like just very large things, like very large hostile things, like we assume this is hostile because the character is attacking the guards when they go by on the horse. This or the dragon or something, that just makes me think like it's kind of like an arms fort. It's just like this big thing that's projecting a threat. And also like the tree itself, like we talked about like From and trees and they keep recycling things, but like the presence of the giant looming tree in the background again makes me think of the giant looming Kojima reactors in Armored Core.
Kojima reactor.
Speaking of Kojima,
Yes.
what I assume is like the warrior class that they show off when they're doing like the little character intro thing, it made me think of Raiden from Metal Gear Rising. I think because the headband is slightly over one eye.
You know what made me think of something?
What?
The tree, the
Yeah.
giant glowing tree.
Yeah.
If you look at it long enough, it starts to look like a giant slug that's standing upright. The one from Bloodborne at the very end.
Oh, yeah, the trunk, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like our little slug from Bloodborne.
You know, there's snails that they make rafts for themselves out of bubbles and they stick to the bottom like that and get washed around.
That's
That's how
beautiful.
they travel underwater, yeah.
So this could be a giant slug.
Well, as we know, Miyazaki is engaged in adversarial 5-dimensional chess with people all the time. So you can't trust anything these days.
Thank you, Ritu.
Do you want to talk about the day-night system? Because we
Okay.
see an example of it. Okay, so
Yes.
there's this castle here that you see for quite a while. Like they linger on it for a while. And then later on, we see the character fighting. It's really hard to make out what it is, but it's like a person with a big sort of curved sword and either like a tentacle or a tail or something that is writhing around after them. But for like a split second, you get to see the castle in the background, and I'm pretty sure it's the same castle.
Okay. I actually like this castle because it's not a typical castle.
Yeah, so we seem to be getting like this is an example of going to a different area at 2 different times. This character is weird because you can't really make it out because of the footage quality, but this like weird kind of blob thing is extending out of their body. And when it happened, specifically here, see, I can't tell if it has like if you look on the left hand side, it almost looks like there's a bunch of skulls and bones stuck in it. Kind of like the lower half of Aldrich. But then I'm also not sure if that's actually there or that's artifacting, because it might just be artifacting. Because there was another point where I thought, oh, there's a castle in the sky, and then I realized the castle was just the word confidential. That was in front of a cloud, and it sort of looked like pillars.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, you sent me this picture. I love it because it looks like some strange abstract art and I don't understand anything that's going on.
It looks like one of those AI generated pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's another thing we only see for a few seconds. There is this enormous contraption that is attached to the castle and the characters walking under it. And like it's sort of hard to get a sense of perspective because I don't know if it's like I don't think it's actually that huge. It's just quite close to where the camera is. It makes it look much bigger, but it's still quite large. It's not clear what it is. It looks a bit like the astral clock or some sort of big cog.
It gave me an astral clock vibe
Yeah,
when I
it
saw
might
it.
also be like a water wheel because it's got what look like sort of paddles on the side.
A very decorative water wheel. Must be a
Yeah,
Kindhurst water wheel.
yeah. So like this, I have no idea what this is. I guess the thing that I've noticed with this is that presumably to reinforce that yes, this is open world, they don't really seem to repeat locations much. Apart from like us seeing this big bridge everywhere.
Hmm.
Yeah. Can we talk about Arm Boy?
Who's the arm boy?
Okay, so when the character with the spear and the catalyst is fighting like what basically appears to be a blob, if you freeze frame it, it's pretty clear, at least to me, that the what you're looking at is like a character whose limbs are a bunch of arms fused together. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
it looks like segmented limbs like an insect, but that they all seem to be arms stuck into other arms.
You think that's the guy from the original trailer? Maybe it's one of his minions?
Like I don't think it's necessarily the same character, but it's very, very similar. It's definitely like the limbs really do look like a bunch of arms fused together. So either it's the same guy, it's one of his friends, or this is just a common occurrence in Elden Ring
Hmm.
that you just make bespoke limbs for yourself. I am a little disappointed that, from what I've seen, the characters like you're not going to be attaching additional body parts to yourself because you just seem to be like a normal dude in all of the footage.
Well, we don't know yet. They're not going to reveal
Yeah,
everything in a trailer.
yeah. One of the things that like happened with the Souls games that I got a little disappointed by was that they started introducing things where you were given a choice that seemed significant, but ultimately it wasn't. And I know it's not technically a Souls game, but if you think about like the two carp merchants in Sekiro, there's this big thing about like which merchant you're going to side with, who you're going to betray, and they both have different kind of personalities and everything. It doesn't matter. You get exactly the same ending either way. It just changes the location of where the final merchant will be. And then you've got like Pate and Creighton from 2, where it's set up as a mystery, but like it's rigged because regardless of the one you choose, the other one is always the betrayer. So it's kind of a meaningless choice.
Yeah.
So I really would like it if at some point in Elden Ring you actually did have a choice that had a significant impact on the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Or even like in Bloodborne when Annalise is like, "Oh, you want to make an oath with the Vile Bloods? You'll rot." Like it's like I do not want to do this, and she presents it like if you do this, like something significant will happen, and you don't. You just get access to a covenant. But like if you imagine like in that if you had taken Annalise's blood, it would have changed like how people reacted to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm hoping is like maybe there is going to be a point in Elden Ring where like you can choose to do something to your body because that seems to be like what's going on here. That like maybe you can choose to like have a limb replaced with a metal one or like replace part of your body with another part, and it won't necessarily like change how your character handles or anything. You'll still be just a humanoid, but if there were like paths you could take, like you could take like a path where your body is more artificial on a part where you're like Frankensteining yourself, that'd be neat. I don't think they'll do it, but it would be neat.
Hmm. Richie, how do we know that
Hmm.
these are actual Elden Ring trailers?
Well, actually, there's an interesting point there because this is a trailer that was for internal viewing.
Hmm.
So we don't know if this is actually the Elden Ring trailer. When we actually get a trailer, it might not be this. This might just be the thing they were throwing around to show people, like, hey, we did this. It's like that the Dark Souls 3 stuff that leaked in
Project Beast
2015.
stuff?
Um, Well, I know that there's Project Beast trailers that predate the one that was shown off, but making internal trailers that aren't really for a general audience is normal.
Mm-hmm.
To like show to investors and show to like within the company and show like this is what we're up to. Look at the cool things we've done. Like, what did everyone think about this? And like the Dark Souls 3 stuff that leaked in 2015. Like we've talked about this before, but that was outdated by the time it had leaked
Mm-hmm.
because it was from an internal thing. If you looked at it, it was written like they're trying to hype the game up, but they're trying to hype the game up to like not to a general audience, not to journalists, but to like the people that they're showing it to. So it listed all these features and stuff that turned out not to be in the finished game because it was internal and it was outdated by the time we saw it because it was internal from like a year previously, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And like this is all watermarked, like it's like literally has internal viewing written on it. I don't know if this is actually going to be the finished trailer. This might just be a mock-up of a trailer or something, like a rough edit of a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So this got leaked yesterday.
Yeah.
Does that give us an idea of when it was filmed on the potato phone?
I don't think so. Oh, well, like, maybe. The thing is, like, something else that happened a little before this leaked was that Bandai Namco trademarked something called Bandai Namco Next. And no one was sure what it meant. And we still don't have confirmation, but the theory is that, like, it's an online presentation thing. It's like a showcase for what Bandai Namco are doing next. So the theory is like the reason this Elden Ring stuff got out is because it's being put in place to show off at this Bandai Namco Next thing. And I have no idea when that's going to be, or even if it is actually a show. But if it is, then like I imagine the Elden Ring trailer would be shown online at this Next thing.
Or not?
Well, I don't know what it is. I mean, a Next is from Armored Core as well, so maybe it's
Another
Armored Core
Armored
6.
Core game. Yes.
Yeah.
Hype.
Yeah, you love Armored Core.
I love Armored Core.
Yeah, we're always discussing builds together. We've got our spreadsheets out.
Yeah. Those parts and the metals.
Yeah, discussing how to get maximum generator output.
There we go.
Yeah, hot girl shit.
Another thing I liked about the trailer was the giant head. Earlier, when I told you, hey, you remember how there's a giant head in the trailer? I really thought that was cool. You were like, what head?
Okay, I'd like to defend myself here on two grounds. Firstly is that you didn't say head, you said face. You said there's a face in the ground, so I was imagining like, is this like some never-ending story Rockbiter stuff, and there's like a face in them, but no, it was actually a giant head. But then I'm also like, is that a giant head, End of Evangelion style, or is just that a human-sized head that's close to the camera? Because I can't tell.
That's a good point. I don't know.
I hope it's a giant head.
Yeah.
I would like nothing more than for there to be just... No, that would be so cool if it's this open world thing and as you're going around you just find like random giant human body parts that are on fire.
Yeah.
I suppose the thing about it that made me think this is going to be different enough to Dark Souls was when they're showing off the 3 character classes and then the camera pulls all the way back when the wizard's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you just see this huge open field in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
There's really been nothing like that before. Just like a big, big open space. There's been like places like Darkroot, but that's full of trees. And like Darkroot still funnels you into like certain paths that you got to like take. And like, Sekiro's got a lot of big open areas, but they're big open urban areas where you're like hopping from rooftop to rooftop. This is like Breath of the Wild. This is just like a big, big space that just seems to go on and on and on. And that's what interests me. Do you like how the wizard is just the most stereotypical wizard imaginable, with just like the pointed hat and everything?
Yes.
I love that.
We call her Zulia.
Okay. Sin, it looks like you have something to say.
A few months ago, some stuff leaked about Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Specifically, some art leaked.
Mm-hmm.
I pasted a couple of images in Discord. Could you please first describe the snake person?
Okay, so our first image here, these are also very low res. It's going to be a recurring theme. So the first one is it's a snake person, but it's not like a primordial serpent or a Sense Fortress snake person. It looks like just an actual snake that someone has stuck a human face on, and not even in a place you would think to put a human face on a snake. It's like sort of close to the snake's head, but on its belly. There's sort of like bits of snake hanging over this person who does appear to have like human looking limbs, but like it looks artificial. It looks like two things that have been mashed together, like some horrible teleporter accident that like a person and a snake got crossbred.
That sounds like a great movie plot.
Hi, Richie here. Just in case anyone watching is too young or just a little bit cinema illiterate to know, when Sin says that two organisms fusing together would be a good plot for a movie, she's having a little joke. Because it is, as we both know, the plot of the film Dr. Jekyll and Ms. Hyde. We now return to the podcast. And the other image was of, we assume it's the giant that we saw in the 2019 trailer. It's just a very large person with this boar tusk kind of helmet and a huge mane of red hair and a gigantic sword. Two gigantic swords on a battlefield. So presumably it's just that character.
Thank you, Richie. And we actually had a piece of concept art released a long time ago. Could you describe what it looks like?
It looks like Prince Lothric
With the
coiled sword. Yeah. And the thing that stands out is that they're wearing a kind of cowl over their face.
Mm-hmm.
But their cowl has a face on it.
And when I first saw the snake person, I thought maybe this snake person shed their skin and then Lothric was wearing their skin as a cloak. But the way you describe the snake person makes me feel like it's unlikely now.
Well, this is another interesting thing about like the weird body horror stuff that's going on in Elden Ring that we get glimpses of, because I'm describing this thing as a cowl with a face on it. What if that is actually someone's skin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there seems to be this thing about, oh, people's bodies are falling apart and having to be repaired. So what if that cowl is actually just some dude's skin that's like, I guess somehow still alive, or like the person who's wearing it is like taking that person's power or something after they've died, or like the skin is taking over that person, or there's some crossbreed thing happening.
Remember Demon Souls?
No. Oh, wait, yes.
Remember the Yellow King?
Yeah, the old monk.
The old monk who had a yellow cloth.
Yeah.
And the cloth kind of controlled him, right?
Yeah. So it could be like, I don't know, but then you've also got like the snake where it doesn't look like a snake person. It looks like a person who has been forcibly and quite crudely crossbred with a snake. So I'm wondering if like, is that the same thing? Was this like a person whose body fell apart and they survived by kind of sticking bits of themselves onto this giant snake, and they carried on that way? That to me is like much more interesting than like, what if there was a magic ring and it was in pieces and you had to assemble it? Like, even the weird giant things that we saw, like it's not even like we got some giants and we stuck some chains in them to pull this thing. Like the giants, like they have just cavities where their stomachs should be. They look like giant corpses that are turning into roots. And they're very, like, clearly very crudely just impaled on this thing.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, so there's stuff going on with, like, it's very like Tower of Latria, where you meet, like, the centipedes with the human faces and the mind flayers that just seem to actually be people that got things like parasites stuck to their heads and stuff. Yeah, so that's what I think is, like, really interesting about what we've seen, this, like, forcible, like, hybridization of people. But then, like, there's the big giant guy, and from what we've seen, he just I don't know, because, like, that giant guy, like, is he going to be important? I don't know, because he seems to not be very well in that trailer.
Richie,
Yes.
I just noticed the giant guy is riding a horse.
Is he?
Look at it. Look at the bottom.
Yeah, there's something under him.
What? Oh my god, that poor thing. Oh, it's like me trying to ride Corvo into battle.
Do you think, like, going back to, because we know that From just, like, keep reusing shit that didn't work in older games.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's going to be, like, in Canehurst, where there seems to be, like, knights with no legs that had to ride horses? Do you think they're going to do that? There's going to be someone whose, like, legs have turned to ash or rock or whatever, and they just have to ride a horse to get around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There are going to be people turning to beasts under the red moon.
Yeah.
There's going to be a grave of the gods.
I think that's almost certain. There'll be something like that.
Do you think there's going to be a painting?
Maybe for the DLC. Because one thing we didn't mention is that it does say on screen that it's an action RPG franchise, which says, like, okay, this is not a one and done thing. There's going to be, like, another 2 or 3 of these at least. And that's, again, like, if you want to talk about it being internal, I feel like if you were making this for general consumption, you wouldn't say franchise. This is something you would show to, like, investors or, like, publishers or something to get them interested in what they've done, rather than, I mean, if you did release a trailer that straight up called the first thing a franchise, that's, like, I feel like people would get a little turned off by that. It seems a little cynical.
But hopefully that means that they're planning it out. So it's not like they did Dark Souls 1 and then it's like Dark Souls 2 is in the North Pole. Dark Souls 3 is not actually the end. It's a
turning point. It's a turning point for the series.
Yeah.
When it turned into Elden Ring. Because that's clearly what this is.
So I think it's better that way. It's better to think long term and to have a coherent like trilogy or whatever.
Or maybe it's not even planned out, but it's just like, we're going to leave it open ended, so that we can do another one, as opposed to, like, the world just ended, or the same thing's going to happen again. Are you excited that our main character is tragic and has crossed the fog to get here?
I don't think we're tragic. I think it's a happy character this time.
Well, the narrator begs to differ. Calls you a tragic thing.
Oh.
And they can't imagine why we seek the Elden Ring. Yeah. Do you want to talk about our character then?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay. So, like obviously it has character creation in it, because we see 3 completely different ones. And they seem to have, like, there's the guy with, like, a curved sword and a shield. There's someone who it looks like they have an axe, and I can't see what else they've got. And then there's like a wizard with a pointy hat and a staff. And then later on we see it looks like a sort of hybrid class where they're using magic as well as a spear.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like the same kind of like Souls archetypes, and Souls character progression is back. And also like flails are new, I guess, because we've not really seen flails in the Souls games before. I know they almost did a flail for Bloodborne because it's like in the concept art book and they didn't do it, but that's cool. From what we know, like we're not from wherever the Riftlands are supposed to be. Like we're an outsider, we've come there. It's very specific that we crossed a sea to get here and find the Elden Ring. Again, it's like our character is a little more proactive. It's not like we're some random guy who got cursed, or we woke up after a blood transfusion or something like that. Like we seem to be like it's a more stock like adventurer character. Like we have a kind of like Demon Souls, but like you had to go into the people who went into the fissure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Also seem to be quite a few people. Like it seems reasonably populated. Like you see there's just people at the campfire, there's people riding by the thing the giants are pulling.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like a little more populated. This just looks like, oh, there's just people here. And like they're hostile, but they're just like people. It's not like they don't seem to be like hollows or beasts or something. There's just a camp full of bandits or something like that.
I hope that we get to visit cities in their prime in Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Because in Souls, we mostly visit like collapsed civilizations.
Yeah.
Even Yarnum, there are people there, but the town isn't doing too well.
No.
I guess it would be interesting to see how Miyazaki envisions a well functioning society, I guess.
What do you think Riftlands are? They say like you've come to the Riftlands. Like presumably the game itself is set in the Riftlands. Because to me, like Riftland makes it seem like there's something that's in flux about it. There's something that's broken.
Like it's separated from the rest of the world.
Yeah, but you see, like, there's all these castles and bridges and stuff, which makes me wonder if it's like Lothric in Dark Souls 3, where just all these bits and pieces of other lands sort of got stuck together to make one place.
Well, this is a character saying you've come to the Riftlands. Maybe it's a little part of the bigger game.
Yeah.
You know?
The very edge of the map.
So that would be cool if this was like a little part of it and then a giant map and there are different zones that like do different things.
Well, this sort of loops around to something I wanted to talk about, which is the boss with the moon behind them.
Yeah, this guy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a prediction.
Okay.
Holy Moonlight Sword revealed here.
Possibly. Like everything we've seen up until now is like it's knights and dragons and wizards and like some giants and stuff. And then this thing shows up and it looks like something from like Fountainhead Palace, Sekiro, just weird stuff going on.
Yeah.
Because what happens is like you see this beam of light come down, which looks to be moonlight. And then there's this character in the middle who is dressed like a kind of like an onmyoji, which is a Japanese like we'll just say like sorcerer. And you then see like it changes angle, and you can see that they're surrounded by these like orrery things, like the ones in Bergenworth. And then out of nowhere, this is just like pure supernatural stuff, like almost surreal. The arena turns to water and this huge reflected moon appears behind them, which is again like it's very Bergenworth. But like what I'm interested in there is that character is clearly like quote unquote like from the east. If you think about the way that Souls does things, there's always like Shiva or Yamamura or someone who's like, this is the like, it's not Japan because it's a fantasy world, but they're like a samurai or a ronin or something, and they're voiced by like an Asian voice actor, unlike everyone else. And we're going to say, oh, they're from the East. So is this like a character who's from the East, and this is just like our one Eastern character? Or is there actually going to be, because it's this big open world, is there going to be this like Japan inflected Sekiro style like zone?
So maybe the map is giant and it's separated into various areas, but the areas being this is a fantasy world with dragons. This is a Bloodborne world. This is a Kindhurst world. This is a magic wizard world.
So it's a metatextual thing, and the different zones are actually different genres.
Yes!
Yeah.
And I want at least one Fallout zone. Please.
Okay.
Fallout 3 though, not
Yeah. What do you think? You just go into another zone and the controls are different. You have to use a mouse from now on.
Yes. One last thing I wanted to talk about was the leaked concept art that again leaked a while ago, but we haven't really talked about it before.
We talked about it on the AMA, but I don't begrudge people for not watching those because they're like 3 hours long.
So can you tell me your general impression of the concept art?
Okay, so we're talking about concept art of the character who is smashing what we assume is the Elden Ring in the 2019 trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And this led to a discussion. There were some raised voices, but it was still a discussion between Sin and I as to whether it is one character smashing the Elden Ring and they look a little androgynous from some angles, or if it was a male and female character and they were both smashing the Elden Ring. And what the concept art seems to be implying is that it's both. It's one character smashing the Elden Ring, but they're male or female depending on the angle you see them from. Like they sort of seem to be switching from one to the other. If you look at the concept art, they're wearing the same clothes. So this led us to wonder if, like, because the gods are supposed to be a big thing in Elden Ring, the gods are going to be present and active rather than like this is something that happened a long time ago and now they're either dead or vanished. So we were like, well, is this a god who just has two forms? Because that's possible. That's like a common thing in mythology. Or is it like the shattering of the Elden Ring makes the body unstable and they start switching? That was another possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And then another possibility that I was thinking of actually is that you don't see that character's face and you hear the narrator go like, it was shattered by someone or something. So I'm now wondering if like maybe it's intentionally being ambiguous as to what character that is because you don't see the face and you can't really tell if it's a man or a woman because they keep changing from the angle you see them from. So is it maybe saying that like we actually don't know who smashed the Elden Ring.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have a fixed idea of who they are. We don't have a fixed identity for them. So they're going to look a little different like as we explain the story because that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, what if, right? You know how in the I've just had this thought. You know how we were saying like the tower near the tree, that would be a good like Firelink sort of situation, right? What if the female character that we see is the Firekeeper equivalent? Because if that's the character who smashed the Elden Ring, that's like presumably the event that kicks everything off. Like it's the most important thing that's happened. So they can't just be some rando character we meet at some point. So I assume they'd either be like our guide or the final boss or both. Maybe they split into two and one is the Firekeeper and one is the final boss.
Ah, interesting.
I hope not, but like maybe. And also like the idea of bodies breaking down, like maybe they survive by splitting. It was one character who survived by splitting into two.
Huh.
Yeah.
When I first saw the trailer, I thought maybe there's a parallel universe thing going on where two people are
Yeah.
doing the same thing in two different worlds or whatever.
Yeah.
But But I
Yeah.
don't think so anymore.
I guess the other thing we should say with regard to this concept art that's leaked is that the first two things we talked about, which were the giant and the snake, they were released by a Chinese YouTuber who is like a big deal, like Souls YouTuber, gaming YouTuber in China. The equivalent of like a Vardy sort of person. And he released that because he thought it was fine to do it. It wasn't a case of like, oh, I found this leak, I'm going to release it to get attention. Like, he thought it was okay to talk about, which suggests that like they must be getting ready to release it if he thought it was fine to do this. He probably was at like a went to like an event with them or something like that, and that's where he learned about it. The other thing is that the reason that the other concept art of the person smashing the ring is out is because the fucking NDA on that concept art has now expired. Like, we're getting to the point where it's been in development for so long that the concept art NDA is no longer applicable. Like, it's actually expired, which suggests that, like, you know, this is not like they didn't start development when that trailer came out. Like, it was pretty much ready to go, and then they were hit with delays, and COVID happened, and they weren't able to keep like. So it's going to be soon.
Okay, thank you, Richie. And the other concept art is of the actual like stand they're working on.
The thing is that because it's concept art, there's 8 different versions. And I don't know which one they went with because it's dark. But all the versions depict like a huge tree.
Yeah.
On the base of this sort of dais that the Elden Ring's been smashed on. There's various different designs of tree, but there's always like they're all multiple trees except one that's one tree wrapped around it. And that makes me wonder if like maybe the big trees that you see in the trailer, there may actually be more than one.
Mm-hmm.
They might be like the equivalent, say, of like archstones you can move between the trees or something like that.
Could this be the interior of a giant tree?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you show, like, just entirely based on what we know, which is not much, and it could be entirely wrong, but I think that this is happening in the big tree that you see in the trailer. And then because that's like the focal point of everything, that's why it's in the middle of the map. And the bridge leading to it and the tower and everything, that's either going to be our like Firelink equivalent, or it's going to be the Anor Londo equivalent.
So I have a question, Richie.
Yeah.
I sent you a picture. Could you describe what I sent you?
Oh, Elden Ring. It's the Elden Ring, we assume, being shattered. And it's on its little dais, but then the dais is on like a giant kind of rock out, like a mesa.
Yeah.
And then that seems to be inside of the tree.
Yeah, so the giant rock, how do you get on it?
Well, if you can command the stars with the Elden Ring, who can say?
Do you think that's how you fast travel around?
I think you will step into the tree and your character will fall, and then it'll fade to black, and then you'll suddenly fall out of the air onto this.
Interesting. It's a pretty big rock you're standing on.
When you arrive, the title card says "Pretty Big Rock." And then you get the trophy, "Arrived at the Pretty Big Rock."
Alright, Richie, do the outro.
That was the Snipe Covenant episode 232. Discussion of Elden Ring leaks. Probably soon superseded by an actual Elden Ring trailer. But in the meantime, you've got this.
Yay!
Sin is a known Loracle, so...
Release date, March 2022.
I think it will be this year. I think it might be soon.
You know, I've had a really tough work at week, so maybe I'm predicting a DLC. That's also possible.
You've had such a tough week that you said I've had a tough work at week. You're so tired and you're trying to quit coffee.
Well, thank you, Richie.
Thank you, Sin.
And thanks to everyone for listening. See y'all next time.
Bye.